next speaker is Natalie Hurley, who's the Director of Marketing at Richard Sandoval. Natalie worked for Hilton Worldwide, Hyatt, and has a lot of experience in both hospitality and restaurant business. Natalie, thank you so much for joining us all the way from Denver. And can't wait to hear about your thoughts into the impact of, again, COVID in your industry. And yeah, thank you so much.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you so much, everyone, for attending today. Delighted to be a part of this. I won't state the obvious. Obviously, every industry in some way, shape, or form has been impacted by COVID-19. However, being in the restaurant industry, we possibly could have had the heaviest blow to our business, and not even just to our business on an economic perspective, but also just how consumers are now interacting with restaurants and the food service industry altogether. As a restaurant group, Richard Sandoval Hospitality is in a bit of a unique position. We own and operate restaurants across the U.S., and so our consumer footprint has been very much affected in the fact that we had to close all of our restaurants. And then on the other side of our business, we have a lot of licensing businesses. So we work with hotel ownership groups, mainly luxury hotels, and they contract us or license us out to be the restaurant of choice in the hotel that they own. And so with travel also being down, hotel occupancy being down, a lot of dining outlets were also mandated by state governments to shut down. So we kind of had a little bit of impact from both sides, both in our owned and operated side of the business, as well as our licensing with hotels. So we really started to see the impact of COVID-19 around early March, when a lot of conventions, wedding parties, events started to kind of pull back in their bookings with us. We thought that would be kind of where it ended. And then, we started to get federal, state, city mandates and executive orders to shut down restaurants. So while a lot of restaurants have kind of taken on a new approach to how they interact with their consumers from a, now online ordering or curbside pickup, we have not taken that approach. We're very much a chef-driven concept. To be quite honest, our food doesn't travel that well. A lot of our dishes are very complex. They have a lot of ingredients. It's a lot of plate presentation. It's a little bit more involved, a little bit more high impact than, for example, like ordering pizza. So with that in mind, we did not take the route of doing online ordering or the to-go route. We have very much shut down our operations. It does, from a financial perspective, it didn't make sense to keep on labor, the cost of product for very little revenues. Even before COVID-19, online ordering, delivery, to-go orders were not a huge component of our business. They're definitely important and definitely kind of a trend in which restaurants are going. But that wasn't a big component of our business. And so with that, closing all of our restaurants and then also having our licensing partners in many cases either reduce hours within the hotel for the restaurants or close them altogether, we also were impacted by the fact that we pretty much have everyone in our company is furloughed from a corporate perspective. So our marketing team, and then also management in the restaurant, front of house, back of house is pretty much at a standstill right now until we get orders state by state to reopen. So with that being said, from a marketing perspective, we're pretty much on a freeze. There is really no marketing right now. We've shut off all paid campaigns. We are very focused around a lot of our marketing is event-based or programming-based. So, we had Easter. That's a big revenue driver for us, as is we have Cinco de Mayo being a Mexican restaurant group. That's the biggest day of the year. We're not most likely not going to be able to participate in that as it's next week. Looking ahead, we had a big convention season in a lot of our cities that we're not going to see revenues from. So overall, I think our business particularly is just very anxious to get back to a stream where we have revenues, where we can open. With that being said, I don't think, the light is going to be switched on and everyone's going to go back to dining the way they used to. I think there's some light coming ahead, especially like states like Georgia, which we have a restaurant in Atlanta. They have officially been allowed to open. And then the issue that we're kind of going to be facing is that, just because the state says we can reopen a restaurant doesn't mean that it's going to go back to the way it was. We will likely have to adapt with, the fear of people wanting to dine or being in close contact. It's likely that the restaurants in most states that are starting to reopen, most states aren't allowing full occupancy of the restaurants. Only 50% of fire code is allowed to be seated. They can't have any groups of 6 or more dining within the restaurant. Bars are not allowed to open as of yet. So I think there's this hope that things are going to start to move, or we're going to start to be able to reopen in some states. Some states are going to take longer, like New York. We have several restaurants in New York that, it's going to be a much longer pathway, longer journey to get back to business. But I think once we do reopen, I think just looking at trends, we're going to see a massive spike in traffic, because I think people are anxious. People are sitting at home. They're over this. I constantly see on my Instagram feed, moms at home, they're just sick of cooking, or, families sick of cooking at home or eating their own food. And even with options like Uber Eats and DoorDash and Postmates, it's just not the same. The quality typically isn't the same. And you're obviously not having that kind of human interaction, that social interaction. So I think people are very anxious and just want things to go back to where they were. I know, like, so many of my friends that I speak to are just like, I just want to go to a restaurant. I just want to go to happy hour and, get out of the house. So I think we're going to see some initial positive kind of upward trajectory spikes in traffic. But then I think people are going to still, on the flip side, be fearful of dining out and making sure that, there is that social distancing within a restaurant. Luckily for us, we do, for the most part, have quite large spaces. And so we can be creative and flexible on how we kind of design and map out dining rooms. But I think, this is just the beginning for restaurants. There's an uphill kind of mountain to climb, I would say, in getting back to normal. I think we're definitely going to have to, from a marketing perspective, take on new strategies, focusing on shifting a lot of our business either online or to order, really start leveraging third-party delivery services, since we weren't really we were in the game, but I would say it wasn't a focal point of our business. The other thing that I think is very top of mind is that when we do have the ability to start reopening, we're going to have to rethink our menu strategy. Potentially, our menus can't be that big. They have to be more focused. We also, in a lot of our concepts, we have a lot of like shareable menus. So it's like tapas style, where the concept is that you order a bunch for the table and then it's very shareable. It's a social moment. It really celebrates Latin culture of socializing and sharing and being with each other. I think that's going to have to be rethought. A lot of our concepts have bottomless brunch, where typically brunch is in bigger groups and you're socializing and there's a lot of gathering. Bottomless plates probably aren't going to be an option anymore, with the whole kind of cross contamination or sharing, which is, not advised at this time. So I think, there's light and hope that things are gonna, somewhat start to reopen, especially with the last couple of weeks, getting news that several states are reopening. But again, I think we have a long journey ahead of us. So with that, again, hope everyone is staying safe and healthy and social distancing from one another. But with that, I will turn it back to Amin to see if there are any questions.
Thank you so much, Natalie. Really appreciate it.
Oh, of course.
And I appreciate your, being very candid with us and telling us the reality of even your own experience right now with Richard Sandoval and the impact that you guys have experienced. And I know, like, as you mentioned, you started feeling the impact early on in March when people started canceling weddings and events. And actually, the question is about that. It's about conventions and weddings and events. I know a lot of people are hoping or have been pushing to Q4.
Yes.
Are you guys getting a little, like, people or calls where people are letting you know that, hey, we're moving this to Q? Are you getting a little bit of that, or is it like, hey, we're just canceling the order and we'll call you whenever we know?
Sure. Yes. So it's a little bit of both. So for example, conventions, which typically, they post their schedule anywhere from 6 months to a year out. One of our restaurants specifically is in downtown Denver, and it's right by the convention center. So we get a lot of business from convention seasons. A lot of conventions have been pushed to Q4, like you said. So we haven't had necessary cancellation, but then it very much, even just thinking when we do reopen, our budgets are going to have to totally be reworked because the budgets, especially our event sales budgets, were very much contingent on the calendar of events that happened or that were going to happen in that quarter or period, for example. Those seem like they're going to shift. I do have, just being, taking a pragmatic approach, I think a lot will be canceled and not just move to Q4. When it comes to social events, I think also our event business is quite dynamic. Like we have a lot of corporate events, and then we also have a lot of like smaller social events, like something like a wedding rehearsal or a graduation party. At this time, those are just, completely canceled. So there is that loss in revenue from them. So it's a little bit of a mixed bag. I think we're hopeful to see that hopefully conventions will continue into Q4, but a lot of like these smaller kind of more social gatherings, definitely not as high of a revenue value, but it adds up when you have multiple, especially into spring. That's typically when we see a huge spike in event traffic, especially some of our restaurants that have, rooftop patios or really, beautiful outdoor spaces. And this is, the season when things are starting to brighten up and people want to get outside. So I think we are going to have to deal with the loss of that and come up with strategic ways to basically recreate that revenue when we have the opportunity to.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Natalie, again, for all of your insight and for being here with us today.
Of course. Thank you.